What did your family do when you finally stood up for yourself? My mom called it a phase. My dad told me I was being dramatic. My brother asked who filled my head with this therapy crap. And when I packed my bags, none of them stopped me. Not even to ask why. They just watched me walk out the front door with 2 duffel bags and a coat that didn't belong to me, something I'd taken from the laundry room out of spite, because I knew it would piss my dad off. I didn't have a plan. Just a coworker who said I could crash on her couch for a few days. That few days turned into almost 4 months. The first few nights I couldn't sleep. I kept waiting for a call, a text, even something passive-aggressive from my mom. Hope you're enjoying your little rebellion. But there was nothing, total silence, and I think that was worse than a fight. It felt like I'd died and they were fine burying me. For a while I told myself I didn't care. But I did. I cared more than I wanted to admit. I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because staying meant slowly erasing myself. The thing is, we weren't the type of family you make Lifetime movies about. There was no visible abuse, no police reports, no fists or bruises. Just years of silent expectations, emotional landmines, and rewritten memories. Every time I brought up something that hurt me, they acted like I was inventing it. My dad's favorite line was, "I don't remember it that way." My mom's was, "We did our best." My brother's was just laughter, like my pain was a punchline he'd already heard too many times. I started therapy after my friend passed away. Car accident. She was 24. That kind of grief does something to you. Strips you down. And suddenly I couldn't laugh off the weird tension at Sunday dinners or the guilt-tripping texts from my mom. I started noticing the patterns, how I always played the peacekeeper, how I apologized for things I didn't do, how my brother could lie to my face and somehow I was the one told to be the bigger person. So when I finally stood up for myself, calmly, honestly, without yelling, they treated it like I'd slapped them. I remember the moment it snapped. My mom was doing that thing she always did, listing off all the ways I had changed, how I wasn't as easy to talk to anymore, how I used to be sweet and helpful and not so angry. I said, maybe I changed because I finally realized I was never allowed to be anything else. And she looked at me like I'd grown horns. That night, I packed. A month into staying on my friend's couch, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my cousin Donnie. We hadn't talked in years. She was always the black sheep, the one who dropped out, moved out, disappeared. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I almost said no, but something in her voice felt familiar. Like she knew exactly where I was mentally and didn't need me to explain it. We met at a diner on the edge of town. She looked older than I remembered. Tired, but not defeated. She asked how I was, and I told her everything, the fight, the silence, the couch. And when I was done, she nodded like she'd been waiting to hear it. Then she said, "You know I left because of your brother, right?" I didn't. No one had ever said that. They told me she ran off with some guy and got hooked on pills. They made her sound unstable. A warning story. She looked at me, real steady. He used to come into my room at night. I told your mom once. She said I must have been dreaming. I didn't breathe. My stomach flipped. I didn't know what to say. I told her again a week later, she said. That time she told me not to say things like that around your dad. That it would make him look bad. I wanted to believe she was lying. I wanted to, but she wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was calm, resigned, like someone who stopped needing to be believed a long time ago. He stopped coming after I started locking my door. And then I moved in with a friend. And that was it. I asked her why she was telling me now. Because you're out, she said, and they don't let many people leave. I asked her what she meant. But she wouldn't explain, just paid for her coffee and left. She gave me a burner number in case I wanted to talk. I stared at it for a long time that night. Back at my friend's apartment, I started thinking through everything I'd ignored as a kid. The weird tension between Donnie and my brother. How she never came to family holidays. How whenever I brought her up, my mom just shook her head and said, "Some people can't be helped." I started to wonder who else had left. I messaged an older cousin, Emma, who I hadn't seen since I was 15. She called me 2 days later. We talked for an hour, mostly small talk. Then she said, "You saw Donnie, didn't you?" I said yes. She said, "She told you." I asked what she meant. And she said, "It wasn't just her." That's when it hit me. How deep it went, how long it had been happening, how much silence it took to keep it all hidden. I asked her why no one ever said anything. Why everyone just kept pretending everything was fine. And she said something I still haven't shaken, because pretending was safer than being the next one. I started keeping notes, talking to cousins, second cousins, family friends, people who'd drifted, and the story was always the same: they left. They were erased, and the family moved on like nothing had happened. That's when I realized, standing up for myself wasn't the start of a rebellion. It was stepping out of a cult I didn't know I was in. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I didn't want to believe it. I kept trying to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Misunderstandings, exaggerations, something, anything, but every conversation I had only made it clearer. What I thought was a family was more like a performance. One built on silence, shame, and strategic forgetting. And anyone who stopped playing along got cut out. After I talked to Emma, I didn't sleep for 2 nights straight. I reread old messages from my mom. The little digs hidden in concern. You know we worry about you. You never used to be this cold. Or, don't let people turn you against your family. They don't love you like we do. It didn't feel like love. It felt like control. I didn't want to become obsessed. I didn't want this to be my entire identity. The person who left, the one who turned over the rocks. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. Not when so many pieces suddenly started clicking into place. Not when I could hear Danny's voice in my head saying, "They don't let many people leave." I decided to talk to my mom. Not call, talk, in person. She agreed to meet me at a neutral spot. Some chain cafe halfway between her house and mine. I could tell she was nervous. She wore makeup she didn't need, kept smoothing her hair, kept looking around like someone might be watching. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. We sat down. She smiled like everything was fine. I didn't bother with small talk. I told her I'd spoken to Donnie. Told her what Donnie said. She froze, didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stared at me like I'd said the name of a dead person. And then, slowly, she said, "You shouldn't believe everything people say when they want attention." I asked her if she thought Donnie was lying. She didn't answer. I asked again. Still nothing. So I said, "If I told you it happened to me too, would you believe me?" That got a reaction. Her eyes filled with tears so fast I thought maybe I'd imagined it. But then she whispered, "Please don't say that." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Because it would mean I didn't protect you." That was the moment I realized she knew. Not the details, maybe not the names, but she knew. And she chose silence. She chose comfort. She chose the illusion of family over the safety of her kids. I left her sitting there. She didn't call after me. Didn't follow. Just sat there with her hands in her lap, like a child waiting to be punished. After that, things shifted. I stopped waiting for apologies. Stopped waiting for closure. I didn't want it from them anymore. I didn't trust it, but I also couldn't just walk away and pretend it never happened. So I started writing it all down. Every story I'd heard, every detail I remembered. I made timelines, connected names, patterns. I wasn't trying to build a case. I knew it was too late for that. I just needed the truth to exist somewhere, outside of whispered phone calls and forgotten text chains. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. No words, just a screenshot. It was a Facebook post from my brother. A photo of our family, all smiles, matching outfits, Christmas morning from a few years back. And the caption, "Real family sticks together." A minute later, another message came through. Just one line, "You're not family anymore." I stared at it for a long time. Then blocked the number. That should have been the end of it. But 2 days later, someone keyed my car. A week after that, my landlord said someone tried to reach out and get a copy of my lease, claimed to be my emergency contact. My mom. I changed numbers, moved apartments, but I knew the message. They couldn't drag me back, so they were trying to erase me completely. The final straw was the will. I wasn't even supposed to know about it. But Emma messaged me after her dad, my uncle, passed. She'd seen a draft of my parents' estate plans. I wasn't in it, not even as a footnote. Not a dollar, nothing, just my brother, everything going to him. "Maybe it's not about the money," she said. "Maybe it's about rewriting the ending. Making you disappear." I laughed. It wasn't even bitter, just empty. Because she was right. For them, the only version of me that mattered was the one who stayed silent, played nice, and didn't ask questions. Anything else didn't exist. But I do exist. And they don't get to decide the story anymore. They don't get to keep the illusion. They don't get to pretend nothing happened. Because I remember. And I'm still here. I stopped trying to prove anything. That was the biggest shift. For most of my life, I was chasing validation like a dog chasing headlights, thinking if I could just explain it the right way, if I could just be calm enough, rational enough, forgiving enough, maybe they'd finally see me. Maybe they'd admit what they did. But you can't reason with people who benefit from misunderstanding you. You can't heal in the same house where you got sick. So I started living, really living, got a job that didn't drain me. Started dating someone who didn't treat my emotions like a burden. Made a small circle of friends who didn't flinch when I told the truth, even the messy parts. And slowly, I started breathing easier. Like I wasn't constantly bracing for impact. But even then, even in the middle of healing, the old stuff had a way of finding me. Like this one time, I went to a small party with my partner. Nothing crazy, just drinks, music, friends of friends. Halfway through, someone introduced me to a girl named Cam. Tall, quiet, a little guarded. Said she grew up in the same county I did. We started talking, comparing notes. Turns out she went to the same high school as my brother, just a couple grades below. I mentioned his name, and her face changed. Not dramatically, just enough. She asked if I was related to him. I said, yeah, unfortunately. She nodded slowly, said nothing. A few minutes later, she found me again, more serious this time. Pulled me aside. I don't know if this is weird to say, she started, but he used to give me rides home. Your brother. I said nothing. Let her talk. I was 15. It always felt a little off. He was older, but not in a protective way. You know? Yeah, I knew. He'd say things that didn't feel right. One time he put his hand on my leg and said it was an accident. That kind of thing. She looked at me, trying to gauge my reaction. Like maybe I defend him. Like maybe I was one of them. I didn't say much, just, you're not the first. She exhaled so hard I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She just said, thank you. That's the part people don't tell you about healing. About standing up for yourself. It's not a clean break. It's not one big declaration where you slam the door and walk into sunshine. It's 1,000 quiet moments where you realize, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was surviving something that everyone else chose to ignore. Years passed. I moved states, changed jobs, got married, cut off contact for good. I didn't go to my father's funeral. Didn't send flowers. Didn't write a message for the service. My brother called once, from a number I didn't recognize. Left a voicemail. Said, you don't have to like me. But he was your dad. You should have shown up. I listened to it once. Then deleted it. He wasn't my dad. He was just the man who taught me how to disappear inside myself. My mom's still alive, as far as I know. Every now and then, I hear through someone, an old neighbor, a second cousin, that she's not doing well. That she asks about me sometimes. That she keeps a photo of me on the mantle like I died. I didn't die. I left. And that's something they'll never understand. For them, leaving is betrayal. But for me, it was the first breath I'd ever taken that didn't feel like drowning. Sometimes, people ask if I'd ever go back. If I'd ever reconnect, try again, reach out, and I always give the same answer. I didn't walk away from my family. I walked away from people who only loved the version of me that kept quiet. And I'm not quiet anymore. I didn't answer the voicemail. Not because I didn't have anything to say, I had too much. Too many things I'd swallowed, rewritten, buried so deep I wasn't even sure they were real anymore. But I knew if I called back, I'd fall right into the same script we'd always followed, me explaining, him dismissing, both of us pretending the call meant something. So I let it rot in my deleted messages folder. And I kept going, except things didn't stay quiet. About 2 weeks later, I got an email from my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister. I hadn't spoken to her in maybe 7 years. She'd always been more distant from the core family mess. Mostly because she moved across the country when I was still in middle school. But she was the only one who ever really looked at me like she saw something. Noticed when I got quieter. Noticed when I stopped coming around. She said she wanted to talk, just talk, and that she wouldn't push anything. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. We met at a park halfway between our cities. It was chilly, quiet, middle of the week. She brought coffee and a folder. I didn't even ask. I just stared at the folder until she said, "It's your mother's handwriting. I think you should see it." Inside were letters. Dozens. Mostly to my aunt. Some never sent. Some clearly written after too much wine. Some dated way before I ever left. The earliest one was from 1997, I would have been maybe 6. I skimmed the pages at first. Thought it'd be the usual, family drama, vague complaints about my dad, the cost of school clothes. But then I saw a line that made my stomach knot. He's starting to act strange with her. Like he used to with Donnie. I stopped reading. Looked up. She knew? Linda nodded. She knew more than she admitted to even herself. She used to tell me she had dreams about it. But it wasn't dreams. It was instinct. She just didn't want to believe what that meant. There was another letter from years later. Right after my brother moved out. It was messier, angrier. Almost illegible in places. I hate that I'm relieved he's gone. What kind of mother feels relief? I watch her sleep and wonder if she'll ever know. Sometimes I think about leaving too, just disappearing, just letting them hate me for it. I must have sat there reading in silence for half an hour. When I finally looked up, Linda was crying. She loved you, she said. I know she failed you. But she loved you. I didn't say anything, because maybe she did. But loving someone while protecting the person who hurt them, that's not love you feel safe in. That's love you have to survive. I took the folder home. That night, I read every letter twice. Sat in my small living room with just a lamp on, my dog curled up at my feet, and pages spread out around me like pieces of evidence in a case I didn't know I was building. At some point around midnight, I started Googling. Not people, places, dates, addresses, old newspaper scans. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the pattern. I kept thinking, if my mom suspected something in me that early, what had she seen before? With Donnie? With Emma? Then I found something. An old police report from 1991. I was too young to remember it. A call made from our house. Anonymous. Said a teenage girl was being harassed by her older cousin. No names listed. The report was marked as resolved with no further action. I checked the date. My cousin Kelsey was 13 then. My brother was 17. Kelsey had always been quiet. Kind, but distant. Moved away right after high school. Never came to weddings, holidays, anything. I never thought to ask why. Until now. I found her on Facebook. Took 2 hours to work up the nerve to message her. Hey, this is going to sound strange. But can I ask you something about when we were kids? She replied within 5 minutes. I was wondering when this was going to come around. Yeah, call me. I'm ready. We talked for 2 hours. She didn't cry, didn't flinch. She told me exactly what happened, and exactly who knew. She said she told our grandma once, and was told not to spread poison in the family. She said my mom sat her down once and told her men go through phases, and not everything is as serious as you feel it is in the moment. She said she started to believe maybe it was her fault. Until she left. She'd never told anyone else. I asked her why not. She said, because I thought it'd kill me if no one believed me. I told her I believed her. And I meant it. I've never meant anything more in my life. That call broke something open in me. A dam I didn't know I was holding. Because I started remembering little things. Not the big moments. Those were easy to deny, to edit in your head. It was the small ones. The way I used to freeze up when my brother walked into the room. How I hated changing clothes in front of anyone, even as a little kid. How I used to sit with my back to the wall at family dinners, like I needed to see everyone. I brought it up in therapy. My therapist looked at me for a long time and said, "You've been walking through landmines so long. You think flinching is just part of how people live." She was right. I didn't have a plan for what to do with all of this. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a courtroom. I just wanted the silence to stop. So I started writing everything down. For real this time. Names, dates, conversations, patterns. I wasn't sure who I was writing it for, me, the people they hurt, maybe the person I used to be. And then I got a message from my brother. After years of silence. No greeting. Just, "You're not going to ruin this family. Don't be stupid." I stared at it for a long time. And then, for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I didn't reply to his message. I didn't even tell my therapist about it for a few days. Not because I was scared, not anymore, but because I wanted to sit with the feeling. The stillness of not reacting. The way my hands didn't shake. The way I didn't rehearse 100 versions of what I could say. That silence? That was power. That was me finally choosing not to carry their fear, their denial, their filth. But the message meant something. It meant he knew. Someone had told him I was asking questions. Maybe Kelsey, maybe Donnie, maybe Linda, and that terrified him, not because he felt guilty, no. Because he knew the only thing keeping him safe all these years was silence. And I'd broken it. A few days later, I was walking home from work when I noticed a car parked across the street from my building. Same car 3 days in a row. Same driver. Tinted windows. I couldn't prove it was anyone in particular. But I didn't have to. I knew the pattern. Fear disguised as intimidation. The unspoken message, "We're watching." I went straight to the police. Not to make a scene. Not to try to get him arrested. Just to document it. I wanted a paper trail. I gave them the message. The history. The pattern. They said they'd look into it. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But for the first time, it wasn't just mine to carry. That same week, my therapist suggested I contact a journalist she knew. Someone who specialized in family abuse cases. Long-term trauma, legacy harm. At first I said no. I wasn't ready for that level of exposure. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, my brother counted on people like me never talking to people like her. That's how this stuff keeps going. Generation after generation, everyone's scared of being the one to break the illusion. So I met with her. Coffee shop, notebook between us. She didn't record anything, just listened, asked careful questions, let me lead. It felt less like a story and more like confession. But it also felt like freedom. After 2 hours, she closed her notebook and said, "There are more people like you than you think. But it's always the first one who gets called crazy." I asked her if she thought I was crazy. She smiled. "No, I think you were brave enough to survive a system designed to make you doubt your own eyes." We didn't publish anything, not yet. She said she'd wait, let me call the pace. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, and taking the power back from people who never should have had it. A month passed. Then I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, a real letter, no return address, slid under my apartment door in a plain envelope. It was my mother's handwriting. I don't know what to say. I didn't stop him. I didn't protect you. I wanted to believe it was all in your head because the alternative was worse. But I see now it was real. All of it. I'm sorry. You were never the problem. I was just too weak to see the truth without breaking. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I hope someday you'll find peace, even if it's without me. There was no date, no signature, just that. I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd already mourned her. The version of her who might have fought for me, loved me loudly, stood up and said, "Not my child." She never showed up, but maybe this was all she had left to give. I let it sit on the table for 2 days. Then I burned it, not out of anger, out of ritual, a goodbye that wasn't about her, it was for me. I didn't need her apology to move forward. I just needed to stop waiting for it. Weeks later, I got a DM from someone I didn't recognize. Another cousin said she'd read a blog post I wrote, anonymized, vague, but just true enough to crack through. She said she always thought something was off about our family. That when she was a kid, she wasn't allowed to be alone with certain uncles, certain cousins. That no one ever explained why. We talked for hours, then days, and slowly, piece by piece, the network grew. People started reaching out, quietly, carefully, all with some version of the same sentence. I thought it was just me. We started sharing stories, supporting each other, comparing timelines, memories, contradictions in what we'd each been told. It was messy, emotional, but real, and the more we shared, the clearer it became, the family wasn't broken. It was built this way. It had rules, systems, silence in, silence out, loyalty to the illusion over loyalty to the people inside it. But we weren't part of that system anymore. We were the ones who got out. I stopped calling myself estranged. I wasn't lost. I was free. I changed my number again. Moved to another city. Legally changed my last name. Started writing full-time, not just about my family, but about survival. Shame. What it means to keep living after everything around you was designed to keep you quiet. Sometimes, late at night, I still check the locks 3 times. Sometimes I still hear my brother's voice in my head, mocking me, daring me to speak. But now I speak louder, and I don't flinch anymore. I started living under my new name like it was a second skin, tight at first, unfamiliar, a little stiff, but eventually, it softened. Grew into me. I stopped looking over my shoulder when I walked into cafes. I stopped bracing every time a blocked number called. I didn't stop remembering, but I stopped reliving. I got an apartment near the water. It was small, creaky, old in a comforting way. The kind of place that didn't try to impress anyone. I painted the walls myself. Bought furniture secondhand, hung up art I actually liked. Not family photos, not reminders, just pieces that felt like mine. One morning, I woke up to light cutting across the room through crooked blinds, coffee brewing, and no one else in the space, and it hit me, this is peace. Not fireworks, not a finish line, just quiet that didn't come with shame. Then, out of nowhere, I got another message. This time from someone I'd never met, Claire. Said she was my cousin. Second or third, didn't matter. She lived across the country but had followed a trail of posts, blogs, whispers, people who'd stopped pretending and started writing. She said, "I read what you wrote and thought, finally, someone said it." I was waiting for someone to go first. She told me her story. It was different from mine, but familiar in all the worst ways. She wasn't reaching out for help. She was reaching out to help. And she wasn't the only one. More messages came, quiet, careful, private. Some had receipts, emails, photos, timelines, journals. Some just had pain, and all of them carried the same question, even if they didn't say it out loud: is it safe to speak now? I didn't have an answer. I still don't, but I built something anyway. An archive, not public, not searchable, just a place where stories could sit side by side and exist. No edits, no disclaimers, just truths that refused to stay buried. A few people asked me if I was ever afraid of being sued. Of retaliation, of getting too close to the line. I always gave the same answer: I'm not naming names. But I'm telling the truth. And here's what no one warns you about: when you stop playing the role they wrote for you, they don't just get angry. They get confused, because their power was built on you performing your pain the right way. Cry in private, keep the tone even, don't sound bitter, don't sound mad. But I was mad, I am mad, and I stopped performing. Months passed. Then I got a letter from a lawyer. Cease and desist. Not from my brother, not from my parents' estate. From a cousin I hadn't even written about. The letter accused me of damaging the family's reputation. Said I was inventing false narratives and encouraging division. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Because when the silence breaks, the people who built their lives on secrets scramble to duct tape the cracks. I sent the letter to my lawyer. Then I wrote a blog post. No names, no lawsuits, just this: if my story offends you, maybe it's because you recognize something in it. And maybe it's time to ask why. I never heard back, and yet, I wasn't angry anymore, not in that sharp, clenched way. It was a different kind now. Quieter, slower, like heat left under coals. A knowledge that would never leave me, but didn't have to rule me. One night, about a year after I left, I ran into someone I hadn't seen since childhood. A neighbor. She recognized me instantly, my face, my voice, something. Asked me if I ever talked to my parents. I said, no. She nodded, then leaned in, almost whispering. I always wondered how you survived that house. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. I didn't reply, but I smiled, softly. The kind of smile that says, I didn't survive it. I built something after it burned. Because the truth is, this wasn't a single decision. This wasn't one act of bravery. It was 1,000 tiny ones. Each time I said no. Each time I walked away. Each time I told the truth even when my voice shook. That's what standing up for yourself looks like. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a viral moment, just choosing yourself again, and again, and again, until one day, you realize you've become someone your family would never recognize. And that's the point. It was around this time, when the storm seemed to have passed, when things were quiet enough that I almost let myself believe in peace, that something shifted again. Not loud, not sudden, just off, like a single wrong note in a familiar song. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. Just small things. A voicemail with nothing but breathing. A manila envelope left outside my door with no return address. Inside, 3 photos. Old, faded. One of my parents at a hospital. One of a newborn baby. And one of a woman I'd never seen before, sitting in what looked like our old living room, holding a child that looked a lot like me. No name, no note, just the photos. I stared at them for hours that night. Compared the faces, checked the details. Same couch, same wallpaper. The child in the third photo couldn't have been more than 2. The woman holding him didn't look like my mom. Not even a little. And yet, the way she held him, the way she looked into the camera, it wasn't distant. It wasn't just visiting. It looked like home. I called my Aunt Linda. I asked her, without explaining why, was I adopted? She went quiet. Too quiet. And then she exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for 30 years. They made me promise never to say anything, she said. But yes, you were. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat there, stunned, staring at a version of myself I didn't even know existed. She told me my parents had fostered a baby boy briefly, just before my brother turned 5. The birth mother was young, poor, overwhelmed. There'd been a chance the placement would be permanent, but the legal stuff dragged out. Months turned into a year. Then one day, the mother just disappeared. The system stalled, and eventually, my parents filed for guardianship. Quietly, privately, I asked her if I was that boy. She said, yes. I asked her what happened to my birth mother. She said, no one ever saw her again. The story hit me like a wave, then receded, leaving only questions. Why did they hide this from me? Why did I never see a single photo, a single record? Why build a life on top of a secret that big? I couldn't sleep that night. I dug through the folder Linda had given me months earlier. Looked for anything, that pointed to this. Nothing. I checked public records, archives, old court dockets, and after hours of searching, I found it, a single line in a forgotten file. Subject placed with James and Carol R., pending finalization. Dated 6 months before my 2nd birthday. No follow-up, no official closure, just pending. The case was never finalized. I sat with that, let it sink in. Legally, I was never adopted. I just stayed, a shadow in someone else's house. A placeholder they turned into a son. And suddenly, so many things made sense. Why I was always the one blamed. Why I was always the one changing. Why my brother got away with everything, and I got punished for breathing wrong. I was never really theirs. I was convenient. I was a secret. I told Linda I needed to find her, my birth mother. Whoever she was, wherever she went, she said she'd help. We started searching. The last known address was in a rural county a few hours away. A trailer park, long demolished. No forwarding info, no living relatives listed. But then I found a name, buried in a social worker's archived notes from the early 90s. L. Baines. No known income. Frequent mental health episodes. Mother of 1. Expressed paranoia about foster family, taking him for good. I stared at that line until the words blurred. She knew. She felt it. I don't know if she was unstable. I don't know if she ran. Or if someone made her disappear. But I know she didn't give me away. She fought. Quietly. Powerlessly. But she fought. And no one listened. I kept digging. Found a distant cousin of hers on Facebook. Sent a message. Got nothing for weeks. Then, finally, a reply. He said she passed away in 2001. No obituary. No memorial. Just a state-issued death certificate. Unattended. Alone. Heart failure, it said. She was 36. I was 10. We were never in the same room after I turned 2. And she died believing she'd failed me. That hit harder than anything else. Not the abuse. Not the secrets. Not even the silence. But that someone who loved me once, really loved me, spent the rest of her short life thinking I'd been taken. And she wasn't wrong. I sat with that for a long time. Let it hollow me out. And then I wrote her a letter. I don't know why. She's gone. No one will read it. But I wrote it anyway. Told her I was safe now. That I remembered nothing, but I felt it. That sometimes when things were quiet, I could sense a kind of warmth that didn't belong to the people who raised me. And I think it was hers. After that, I changed again. Not outwardly, but something in my spine straightened. I stopped chasing explanations from the people who'd failed me. Because the real story wasn't about why they hurt me. It was about why I survived. And who gave me the first piece of strength to do that, before I could even speak. It's strange how a life can be built on things that never happened. No one told me I was adopted. No one ever admitted what my brother did. No one ever said, "We knew," and we looked away. No one ever apologized for the way they used me to patch holes in their broken dynamic. And yet, every room in that house still remembers. I haven't been back in years. But I know the layout by muscle memory, the sharp creak in the fourth stair, the kitchen drawer that always jammed, the spot on the wall my mom used to stare at when she thought no one was looking. I never went back to get closure. Because there's nothing there I need anymore. I still get messages sometimes. From people who knew us. From people who read the story and want to say, "I always thought something felt off about your family." Some are kind. Some are just curious. Some feel the need to defend the people I walked away from. I don't respond to most. Because here's the truth no one prepares you for: healing doesn't require everyone to believe you. It just requires you to stop waiting for them to. I still don't know exactly what happened to my birth mother. I never found a photo of us together. Nothing with my name on it in her things. But I keep her death certificate in a drawer. Not because I want to look at it. But because it exists. She existed. And for 2 years, she was the only person in the world who saw me as her son. That matters. It matters more than all the lies that followed. As for my brother, last I heard, he's still exactly where he's always been. Same house. Same job. Married now. A daughter. I think about that more than I want to. Not out of vengeance. Just fear. Fear for her. Fear of the cycle. Fear of how charm and silence can wear the same face. I've thought about reaching out. Not to him. To her. The girl. His daughter. Leaving a letter somewhere. Telling her what to look for. What not to tolerate. That someone out there is paying attention. But I haven't. Maybe one day I will. Or maybe she'll find her own way, like I had to. My mom died 6 months ago. Lung cancer. Someone emailed me the obituary. Said she went quietly. Said my brother was there. I wasn't mentioned. That stung a little. Not because I wanted to be in it. But because even in death, they stuck to the script. But grief? I didn't feel any. Just a kind of dull understanding. She wasn't a monster. She was a weak woman in a system that rewarded silence. A woman who was hurt long before she became a mother. A woman who never had the courage to break what she inherited, and passed it all on instead. That doesn't excuse anything, but it explains everything, and that's all I ever really wanted. Not justice, not revenge, just the truth, spoken out loud, without being told I was crazy for needing it. Now, years later, I live far away. No family nearby, no holiday phone calls, no reminders in the mailbox. Just peace. And sometimes, that peace feels too quiet. Like I should be bracing for the next blow, the next guilt trip, the next revisionist memory someone needs me to carry for them. But there's nothing, and that nothing, that silence, that's what it feels like when you finally stop bleeding for people who swore they were family. You stop explaining, you stop defending, you stop hoping they'll meet you halfway. And you just begin again. Somewhere new, somewhere real, and you never, ever apologize for saving your own life. Final edit. I never thought I'd post all this. I started writing for me, just to make sense of the knots in my chest. But if you're still reading, and any part of this sounds familiar, if you've ever sat through family dinners with a lump in your throat and a smile on your face, if you've ever been told you were the problem for wanting to be treated with respect, if you've ever been made to feel like walking away was betrayal, let me say it as clearly as I can. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not selfish. You're just finally free. And that's not a phase. That's survival. That's yours.